Happy New Year and welcome to the first edition of Upfront REAL, the podcast for 2026, brought to you by Ohio Cooperative Living Magazine and Ohio's Electric Cooperatives. I'm Karen Whitney, your host, and each month we come and talk to Craig Grooms, our president and CEO, about his Upfront column in the magazine. And we also talk about topics that impact the co-ops across the state, and specifically the mission of co-ops, which is to provide reliable, environmentally responsible, affordable electricity to their local communities. I like to call it REAL, hence the name of the podcast. But for 2026, you talked about in your column in January that this is the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And you drew some similarities between that and how co-ops began to form and how they operate. Talk to us about your perspective on that.
Okay. Well, Happy New Year to you. Happy New Year to everyone that's listening. I made this analogy before. It's not exactly, perfect, but, I like to think back into, the mid-late 18th century. The colonists, the American colonists, they were unhappy about the treatment they were receiving from Great Britain, whether it was taxation or just mistreatment. And then they came together and created what we have now, right? It's fantastic. We have a great country. Sort of put yourself into the 1930s. We had rural communities across Ohio, across the country, that didn't have electricity, even though electricity was being built out for several decades. And the country, the government that was created from the colonists, had funding available that allowed rural communities to build out a distribution network so that they could bring the lights to the farms in the rural areas. And so I like making that connection. It's interesting that this is the 250th anniversary of the Declaration, which is fantastic. I think it's going to be a year of celebration and an opportunity for us to really reflect on what we have, what we appreciate, and what can we do better. And that's for electric co-ops as well as the country. So I think it's going to be a big year, and I look forward to it.
Yeah, you mentioned that too. 2026. There's some big things happening that could impact co-ops. The regulatory reform at the federal level, as far as the energy industry goes and generation. What's happening with that you see could possibly move forward this year, and how's that going to impact co-ops?
Okay, well, 2025 was a really busy year in terms of regulations and changes. A lot of it was very positive. At the federal level, several environmental rules released by the EPA back in 2024. Those rules were purposely meant to, over the next decade, shut down coal plants, shut down a lot of natural gas plants, prevent new natural gas plants from coming online, all at the same time that we're seeing record demand. And so we've seen the EPA over the course of 2025, we expect it to continue to really, roll out a reasonable set of environmental rules that is responsible, but also allows our industry to respond to all this new demand. So we're really thrilled and appreciative of the changes that we've seen, and we look forward to more happening as well. But it's not just the EPA, it's the Department of Energy is very active in trying to retain power plants to make sure there's enough generation available for this new load. The FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, has recently rolled out some proposed new rules to help streamline the interconnection process, primarily for new large loads like data centers, but really try to improve the process of connecting loads to the transmission grid that we're all dependent on. And we really look forward to working with them and a lot of our industry allies over the course of this year to help streamline, help influence what those rules end up looking like. And I think it's going to be a big benefit going forward.
It really sounds like there's a circling of the wagons around keeping electricity reliable.
It is, yeah. And across the industry, across the federal government, the state of Ohio, I think people can appreciate now what we were really learning back in 2022, 2023, that, hey, we need to keep the power plants that we have because we're seeing a ramp up, a very aggressive ramp up of new load, primarily data centers, but manufacturing, residential growth. And we really need to, preserve the grid. We talk about the importance of the power grid, right? And so I think it's really acknowledgement and recognition that we need to keep what we have because we all depend on it. And can we make it better, and can we make it more responsive to this new load that's coming on the system?
Yeah, you brought up data centers. That was my next question. The other thing that we could see evolve in 2026. I see a lot of people sharing things on social media about, hey, a data center here or there. We know we've got some data centers that want to locate in co-op service areas. The two biggest concerns I see people commenting about are, hey, is there going to be enough power, which we just talked about, reliability, but also, is it a data center moving into a co-op territory or even outside of a co-op territory, is it going to cause their rates to go way up?
Yeah, so that everybody's talking about it. Every event we go to, pretty much every conversation, somehow, some way, data centers are involved in that, and how we're going to meet those demands. We hear about the opportunities of data centers. So Central Ohio appears to be, ground zero for a lot of data center development. Northern Virginia, other parts of the state. And we hear about the benefits of a data center, and typically it's related to a tax base, right? And so they bring a lot of tax revenue that can benefit the local community, might benefit the state. But we've also heard that it brings a lot of construction jobs, but not a lot of permanent jobs. It might have some indirect jobs to support the data center, but that's been the big concern. They're power hogs. They use a lot of infrastructure. They require a lot of infrastructure. And so all of that is related to the topic or the concern about higher power bills. They're using more of the power grid, right? And so more transmission needs to be built. And if those loads, if the costs aren't fairly allocated to those loads, then all consumers have to pick up the bill. And so we're trying to manage the process, try to influence the rules that govern how costs are allocated to make sure the new investments being made to serve data centers, those data centers actually foot the bill. And then on the generation side, the resource adequacy concern. We see new data center loads, very large loads, come onto the system very quickly, much quicker than what we've seen power plant development, really through the history of the industry and what we can expect in terms of securing new turbines, securing all the equipment, all the permitting involved. That often takes 5 to 6 years, and new data centers often come online in 2 to 3. And so that's part of the concern, is that, okay, we're going to run out of electricity, or the grid's going to be stressed, and that's going to push everybody's rates up. And that's what we're trying to manage now. I call it, we're in the middle of the sausage making, and we truly are. We're trying to help influence the rules that are being written that govern how the power grid costs are allocated, and then power generation as well. Fortunately, we talk about the benefit, the advantage of the co-op business model in terms of, we have a board of directors for our electric co-ops, the distribution co-ops. Buckeye Power, the G&T, the generation and transmission co-op for the state, has its own board of directors made up of community of folks from the distribution co-ops. And so we can govern ourselves, that we can make decisions for ourselves in terms of what investments need to be made and how are those costs going to be fairly allocated. It's way more complicated when you start talking about state policies, federal policies, that they don't have the granularity that we do, right? The ability to say that specific consumer is causing this cost and they should pick up the bill. So they're trying to write rules that fairly allocate the cost, but it's not easy. It's very complicated, and again, it's not as granular as what we can do. So we just have to be part of the process, try to influence that process, and I think we'll end up in a generally good place, but it's going to be complicated and difficult, and but we'll get there. I have confidence.
Yes, it's really the jury's still out. There is no fact when it comes to this is what's going to happen if a data center moves into your area. I think that's trying people to understand
exactly right.
that
that's
it's
exactly
the
right.
sausage making is still happening, and we don't know the answer really
That's
to
right.
some of those questions yet.
That's exactly right.
Okay. Well, thank you for the insight. We appreciate it, and thank you for watching Upfront and Real. We hope to see you again next month.